Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here tonight for this special screening of Paper Spiders, written by Natalie Shampanier and Inon Shampanier, and directed by Inon Shampanier, who is an alum of our production program. He'll be joining us for the Q&A after the screening, which should be about 110 minutes or so. So be sure to stick around for that. And be sure to tell people about the film after seeing it and spread the word. For more events, you can go to cinema.usc.edu/events. I think we still have a few more before we officially sort of wrap up for a little bit. But with that, thanks again for being here and enjoy the show. All right, please welcome SCA alum, director, and co-writer Inon Shampanier. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Correctly enough, I just can't seem to start the video.
Oh, you know what? That might be me. Hold on. I have to ask you to start.
Start my video.
Did that do it? There we go.
Perfect.
Is it enough?
Thank you everyone for tuning in, for watching. I really appreciate all the warm responses. It's very moving. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we don't usually get such an active chat board of enthusiasm, so it's really exciting to see that.
It's very moving. The reactions to the film have blown us away. I really, in my wildest dreams, didn't think that the movie would resonate with people so deeply. It's very moving.
I do want to quickly remind our audience. So, what we do for the Q&A, type your question into the Q&A box, and then what we like to do is we like to invite you up as a panelist to ask it directly. You can do that with camera on or off, just audio if you want. If you don't want to do that, if you would rather I just read the question for you, still type it in the Q&A box, and I will just read it on your behalf, whatever works for you. So there's already some coming in, but feel free to do that at any point throughout the Q&A, and we'll get to the audience portion in a bit. So this is a really, I can always tell when I'm moved because my notes do one of two things. I either have a notepad that's totally full or totally empty. Either I was so into it that I'm either writing so many things down throughout, or I don't even think to ask a question during it. I just watch the whole thing. So I had a very similar reaction to our audience.
Thank you so much.
So I know that you co-wrote this with your wife, Natalie,
yes.
who's also a psychologist or psychiatrist, which
psychologist. She's a marriage and family therapist.
Yes.
That was her fallback career after going to film school actually at CSUN and just knowing how tough the business is. But in recent years, she went back to focusing on screenwriting. So
it's a good combo. You yes, all about understanding people. So
yeah. I feel like her knowledge of psychology is invaluable for what we do.
Well, especially in a film like this, where not only did you have her professional background, but you also, I believe, this was sort of inspired by her relationship with her mother, who also has this.
Yeah, it was actually very sadly. This is inspired by truth. It's in many ways very similar to the story that we had with Natalie's mother, who was an extremely sweet person, loving and kind and funny, and in every regard, just a wonderful woman. But she was also a victim of delusional disorder. And what she went through was very similar to what we see with Lili Taylor's character with a neighbor, and it was heartbreaking to watch. It's as if you love someone who's in a nightmare that you can't wake them up from. She was feeling persecuted for years of her life when no one was chasing her, and there was nothing we could do to convince her otherwise. And trying to convince her that she's living in a false reality and that maybe she has a problem damaged the relationship in ways that just broke our hearts. So we as writers, we just process the things that we care about into scripts, and this was just something that we cared about so deeply. but we were so secretive about it when we were going through it. Obviously, we didn't want even our friends to know about it. And even when we wrote it, first of all, our track record of getting movies made was never very good. So we figured, we can't get our exciting thrillers made. We're definitely not going to get this, low budget indie drama about mental illness made. So we kind of figured, okay, there's no risk in anyone ever seeing this screenplay turn to life. And then we didn't think that we would tell people that it's based on truth. We felt like we could just hide that. And the moment we started sharing the script with people started saying, this is just like my story, dealing with my mom, my dad, my aunt, my neighbor, my friend, my cousin. And once people started opening up to us, we started opening up to them. And we realized that actually we're telling a bigger story here that had a lot of value. I think even for people who were not touched by mental illness in their family, even the narrative of just what do you do when there's someone that you love who has problems that are just beyond your control, and you try to care for them and you can't. To us, this was an extremely compelling narrative because we lived through it. And at the end of the day, it's about love. It's about unconditional love. Or what do you do when you love someone and you can't help them? So it came, that's a real piece of our hearts on screen.
Yeah, it did feel very appropriate screening this, both during Mental Health Awareness Month and also 2 days after Mother's Day.
Yeah.
I felt like we hit the real sweet spot for it. True, this is all, this is a story about mental health, but this is also a story about attachment and about real attachment traumas that occur.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking of too was, originally I was disappointed that Natalie couldn't join us, but I totally get, like, if this were my story like that, I don't think I'd want to continue to talk about.
Oh, no. She's happy to. It's just that she has three kids to put to bed without my help tonight. So let me see if she's she may be able to join later. Depending on how tough negotiators our kids will be with their bedtime. So we may get some Natalie here tonight. We'll see.
Well, tell me a bit about. I guess there's a few ways of sort of asking this question about the writing process. I think because of the personal nature of the story, I just want to start with sort of the process of separating. Well, first of all, you start this sort of after her mom died or before?
No, we started writing it after her mom passed away. Yeah. I don't think we'd be able to do it. We wouldn't. I think that it takes a little bit of time to distance yourself a little bit from to process the experience before you can write about it. And also, yeah, I mean, it was just, I mean, we had no intention of sharing that it was based on truth when we were writing it. I don't know how we were naive enough to believe that people would just see through it. But yeah, we didn't plan to share how personal the story is.
Did you find it difficult to distance yourself emotionally, or did it take maybe multiple drafts to get to a point where you felt like it was no longer you telling Natalie and her mom's story and your story too? You're a part of
yeah. That. I mean, in truth, it wasn't hard in terms of the writing process. It was just sad because, I mean, to us, this is a piece of reality, and we just know how real it is. And Lili and Stefania did a phenomenal job bringing that truth to life, and having lived through it and having lived through the original version and seeing, without having known Natalie's mom, just seeing how they bring their truth to it and how poignant it is. It's just, I mean, it was, I mean, we try to balance it with as much comedy as we could, natural comedy, but it was, I mean, there were some tears on set. It was not just, I mean, for Natalie, there was a particularly, she came to set a few times that we're filming in Syracuse, and some scenes were very emotional. But even for the crew, I mean, we shot the police scene, and I would turn around and just see like crew weeping, and we really, it's also a combination of so many things. I mean, we had such a fantastic crew and cast of so many people who are so close and emotional, and I feel like people respond, even filmmakers, crew people who worked with us in the movie. And we're lucky to work with just a terrific group of people who were, oh, great, we have Natalie here to join me. Go ahead. Do you want to pull up a chair? We had a terrific group of people work in the movie with us. And and being able to, and they also it felt like we're not just making a movie, we're telling a story that is important. And we haven't had that experience before with projects where people really put their hearts in it, not just because they love what they do, but also here's Natalie, our writer.
Hi, thanks for joining us, Natalie.
No, not at all. I was talking about our experience making it. So so it wasn't just special for us. I feel like for everyone who worked in it, they really put their hearts and souls into this project, and it really shows cast and crew, and we're very, very fortunate to have just a terrific group of people making this movie together.
So Natalie, right before you sat down, we were kind of talking about the writing process and finding both catharsis in writing this, but also emotional distance required to write this out. So I'd love if you could sort of contribute on what Inon has already sort of shared on that, of just your experience going through that.
Yeah, I mean, catharsis, is a great word for it. I mean, I don't know what you already said or didn't say, but yeah, I mean, it definitely was. Yeah, it definitely was when liberating, kind of writing it, not thinking that it's going to get made, because that's kind of the reality of our lives. But it was a way to be more truthful, and it was difficult too, because it was inspired by a true story. Yeah. But it was liberating, just knowing that like it may not happen. You could just write whatever you feel, and I'm sure you probably already talked about.
I mentioned it. What I didn't mention is that Natalie is a really good comedy writer. She's just naturally a really funny person, and she naturally just gravitates toward comedy. I almost feel like it's hard for her sometimes to write things without putting comedy in it. And I think that it was so helpful. I think that our very first conversation about the story was, Natalie said, "Oh, how about we write a movie, that's inspired by what we went through." And our first thought was just, this could be a really sad movie. And we said, okay, if we do it, we have to balance it with comedy, and we have to find the right tone that obviously we're not being insensitive, but we're at least, adding a little bit of levity to it, just so we're not breaking too many hearts. Actually, I had a great writing teacher at USC. I don't know if Paul Wolf is still teaching. Probably not, but Paul Wolf.
Oh no, I don't think he is at this point.
No. I think that he actually left even when I was already at USC. I graduated in 2007. I think he may have left at 2007. But I remember him saying, "You can take your audience to hell, but you have to take them out of there. You have to get them out as well." And I think that we kept it in mind. That actually touches on a different point of how we just felt like we need a little bit of optimism balanced with the realism. But also we felt like we needed some comedy and some levity, and we actually liked the fact that the process was gradual. And life is too. I mean, you don't live in a genre where everything is bleak and from the get-go. And Natalie's mom too, which I mentioned, was such a sweet woman. She was also really funny, and we also had a lot of fun moments with her. And there was, and you and your mom had such a kind of beautiful relationship, especially before everything spiraled, and we felt like there was some truth to it. There's like quirky Woody Allen neurosis could be kind of funny, but once it turns into psychosis, it's really not. So we try to find the right balance, and hopefully it worked for people.
I do want to, before sort of unpacking that more, I do want to comment on how much I really appreciated the ending, where I feel like almost always hospitalization and inpatient or outpatient treatment is always painted as like the down point of the film. Like, here's the person at their worst when they're hospitalized in this awful environment. And I think this is the first film, at least that I've seen recently, but certainly that's coming to mind, where actually they paint, you both paint that as the ray of hope that it is for this person who's really struggling. So I didn't have a question as much as like wanting to acknowledge an appreciation for that, which Natalie, I'm sure, is partially related to your background in being a therapist, of having an appreciation for the necessity of that.
There really is a ray of hope. Like, I mean, it's a very difficult disorder because the awareness, like a lot of people aren't aware that have delusional disorder. They're not aware that they even have a disorder. And that's the hardest thing to treat, when you don't even acknowledge that there is a problem. So, and then so many people, like, who knew that the ending would be so, like, I mean, people have such strong opinions, and you can never please everybody. But personally, a lot of movies, especially like big Oscar Hollywood movies, just end, and it's almost like they purposely I feel like they end like in a somber way, or they'll just like credits start rolling and you're like, oh, I guess that's the end. And we just, I mean, the movie is, you know, heavy, and so it was important for us to just kind of end it on a positive note, or semi-positive, but not
optimism, but also realistic. I mean, to us, that almost final shot, I think it's 2 shots before the final shot of the movie, where Dawn is on the computer and she hears a noise and she turns to look and she has to work on herself to go back to writing. Yes. Really has had incredible truth, because it's going to be a lifelong struggle. She's going to need to keep dealing with it. Even if she takes medication, even if she accepts that she has a problem, it would still be a lifelong battle, as it is for many people with many disorders and addictions. And so we try to suggest that even though, you see at the end that, they're sitting by the pool, and, the pool where the father passed, and died, is finally open, and you get it that there was some recovery from the trauma of his death that was probably a big trigger for it. And even though you still see like that yellow umbrella on the side, kind of suggesting that as in the beginning that mental illness will always be there, but that sense of optimism we felt was grounded. It's funny because we've been reading reviews the last few days, and some people felt like the ending was too sad, and some people felt like it wasn't sad enough. And who knows? But we try to balance optimism with realism, and
And also, like, when you're on medication, it's an extra step that helps with, if you're willing to address that you have a problem. Like, we tried to show that she was aware that she maybe has, what her, somebody drafts me, was it her grandmother? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
What her grandmother has, or
it was actually a really good line that, for different reasons, actually mostly just in order to let the music take over, we cut from the movie that as Melanie's driving Dawn to the hospital, and we have that camera mount shot outside the window, and she says, we had her say a line, "I'm not like Aunt Doris," or something. "I'm not like Aunt," suggesting that there was a family history. But it felt like at that point, let's just let the music take over and not give the audience more information. They've had enough.
Well, I really liked the balance at the ending, because it did feel grounded in realism. Because this is how actually the problem gets solved. It's not this like happily ever after, but the pool to me was this great image of healing that you managed to work in there, which is a really lovely image. And yet it's painful and it's hard, and there's sort of more still to work through. And of course, there's all the complications of her having to leave USC, which is like the sacrifice required for this, that on one hand, like, that's not a happy ending. And so
that's also like, people are very upset, like, what a bitch of a mom. Sorry, but like, people are just like, why did she sacrifice? But that's life. Like, I mean, we sacrifice all the time for our families, whether we realize it or not, for people that we love. I mean, that's kind of life. I think it's not always, happy.
And I would say that actually, even though the movie is very much a piece of Natalie's life, the USC part of it was probably to some extent a reflection of my own fears. I'm from Israel, and I left my family, whom I love so dearly, to come to the US and study film and go to USC. And it was so sad leaving them behind and just moving to a new country, new place, to follow a dream that's so fickle. And the idea of, just going to USC and leaving your home behind and being on that airplane, that is, and the thought of like, what would I do if circumstances did not allow me to go, and I would have to give up my dream? And I could easily see, certain things happening, medical or other, that would make me give up the dream. So I think that and for so many people, and I'm sure so many people watching, there are always sacrifices that are made for family, and you're lucky when you get to pursue your dreams. Very often you can't because of circumstances, and you have to be a caretaker, or you have to give yourself to someone else. So there's again, at the end of the day, it's about that love and care.
I've never actually asked it before, but since you're bringing up reading reviews and stuff, I am curious. Because I get this way when writing academic papers of, there's that criticism I see and I'm like, yeah, like they nailed it. Like, that's totally right. But clearly you've had very polarized reactions to some of this ending. Is there any review you've read or reaction you've seen that actually has resonated with you as like true? You're like, oh, like, yeah, actually, this is something interesting that we wish we'd explored more, or something like that. I know it's like a really tricky question that you're.
No. It's actually it's a good one. We actually were really fortunate to have.
I know, as much as we're complaining, like the reviews are polarized, they're still like fresh.
No.
I mean, they're still good and positive.
I really never imagined. I mean, our journey with this movie was not easy. It was not easy to get it made. It was not easy to get it sold. It was not easy to get it into festivals in the COVID year. It was not easy to get it released. I mean, it was hard. And I mean, we shot the movie 2 years ago. So throughout those 2 years, we had a feeling that, maybe this, movie will just sink without a ripple, that no one will really, it'll just be, like one of those many great indies that, they just kind of disappear because they don't really have distribution and no one really heard about them and you don't really have the power to generate word of mouth. And we even, I would say that there wasn't a fear, there was kind of the acceptance that good chances that, this movie, we did not get into any of the big festivals, we didn't get into Sundance, we didn't get into Toronto or Tribeca, or and many smaller festivals rejected us, so to answer that question, then I think we already kind of went through that of like questioning, like, we should have done this differently, we should have done that, and we shouldn't have had like it's so sad, or we shouldn't have had it indie, or we should have more indies. So like, maybe and then you read reviews and think, maybe it had too much comedy and we just should have pleased the critics and just go very dark and somber, and and then maybe you should have made something that's more commercial. We went through all of that, really feeling like, I would say, especially having not gotten into the big festivals last year, and then also in a COVID year, really not seeing much of it, and having a really hard time selling the movie, because the consensus last year was that in times of COVID, people just don't want to see sad dramas. So many people, our producers, sent it to sales companies and distribution companies, and they're saying, look, we really love the movie, great acting, that was so touching, not for us. We just, and you get it. I mean, they're in, I mean, there's a business, and this is not something that seems like a commercial project. So, but we never imagined the overwhelming positive responses that we've received the last week. And it's really, that's very new to us. So yeah.
Don't jinx it. Please keep it positive, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, this was the most positive audience reaction I've seen so far. And I should include the disclaimer, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 91% from audiences. So clearly, like, there's not much to be self-critical about. Like, you hit the mark.
It depends on
there always is.
Yeah.
I mean, I was killing myself in post-production about things that I viewed as mistakes that I should have done differently. I lost sleep for weeks over things that I bet 99% of the people watching wouldn't have picked up on, but things tormented me. I would wake up in the morning and go to bed at night just thinking about how I should have done things differently. And
this is coming from a very positive person.
I mean, I knew that I'd have to be blind not to know how terrific an actresses we had. I mean, I knew that before we stepped on set, and I knew that, we were lucky. And not only were they terrific and just wonderful to work with, all of our cast, really, each one of them, perfect. But also they gave their hearts to the movie, and they're just so easy to work with, which is also something that people don't often talk about. I mean, some of the greatest actors are just extremely difficult, and they were just a pleasure. I mean, really, this was a blessed production. But there are just some things that you have in your mind that will be a certain way, and then they end up not being that way, and you don't have the confidence in your heart that it's for sure going to work the way that you envision. So
plus, nothing feels like it's working when you're filming it. Nothing. Like it all feels like, everyone's pretending when you're on set, which they are, but it doesn't come off that way. It's
pure chaos magic. That's what filmmaking is. Just bottling that chaos and trying to control as best as you can.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that you learn, I remember, being at USC and doing shorts, which is really, for anyone, and I'm sure the many students who are listening, it's actually the odds are stacked against you. I remember that feeling, when I was a student, and you see movies that you love, and then you go to a short and you're like, how come this is so, far removed from what I see, and what am I doing wrong? And you kind of don't realize how much the author sector again to listen. I mean, you're one kid with a camera. If you're lucky to have one of your friends do the boom, you don't have the resources that you need to put something great together. You also very often don't have the experience. But even when you have a lot of talent and passion and the best intentions, it's so hard. You need this movie, we had so many talented, great friends working around the clock, not sleeping, just to make everything, every little detail, work, just to, and it's, it just, you kind of, when you watch a movie, it just kind of seems like, oh, the location is there. It's, you don't even consider the fact that maybe it's built and, and they finished painting it, 5 seconds before you turn on the camera. And that they're sitting in the piano bar, which is not a piano bar. I never had a piano there before. That you shoved in for a night scene. That's actually in days. That actually you had to shoot in daytime for scheduling reasons and blacken out the windows, and didn't have a counter around didn't have a counter around the piano for people to sit on, which they finished building and gluing and painting 5 seconds before we started filming. And the smell of the glue, it's great acting when you're sitting there and you can't even be in the room because the smell of the glue is just making you faint, and everyone is just pretending to be. That's great acting. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's just so many things. So yeah, makes you grateful when things come together.
I think I saw an audience question at some point asking about this, and since you're talking about location, this was all, other than the USC scenes, they were shot in...
USC was shot in Syracuse University.
It was.
We could not
afford this one building.
We could not.
This is good
I'm glad we fooled the locals. But no, I wish. It's funny. We wrote the movie originally. I mean, we're in LA now. We wrote the movie in LA.
Duke was supposed to be.
Oh, it was Duke. I thought it was NYU. It was Duke. Okay.
Yeah.
So we thought that maybe she's on the West Coast. She goes to school on the East Coast. California doesn't really offer you much, in the way of tax incentives. So we ended up filming in New York, and Syracuse is such a beautiful city that's so rich in just beautiful visual locations that have just barely been exploited in film. And the people are so nice and so supportive, and the community has been, and also, above everything else, you have a terrific crew, which if you don't have that, it doesn't matter what incentives they give you. If you don't have a great crew on the ground, you're going to be so slow, and the work is just not going to be good. And then it doesn't help that that you're getting some rebates back if your crew can't pull it off. But we had a fantastic crew and beautiful support from the city and the community and beautiful locations.
But it also helped that the college looked a lot like USC, because I remember we were what is it, with the satellite, looking at different schools. Oh, yeah. And I didn't go to USC, but I didn't think that anybody would notice. And I was like, there's dragons at this school. I mean, those statues. That can't pass.
Yeah, we have to be very selective with our shots. but having extras where USC sweater is definitely helpful.
And it completely threw me off the set, so I didn't even realize. Maybe it's because you also shot on a day with good weather, so I just assumed it was LA. I don't know.
The good weather is maybe the biggest illusion in the movie. Even though we shot it in May, rain was so shifty in Syracuse. My only complaint about Syracuse was the rain. We've had, whenever we thought that it's not going to rain, it was raining. Whenever we thought that they were going to have a clear day, whenever we're like, okay, today is the one day that's supposed to be sunny this week, we're going to have our big exterior scene. Of course, it's raining all day. People are splashing in the mud. Me and the actors falling all over the place in the mud. It's
when you lose in tax incentives in California, you gain in weather. That's
that is true. Yeah.
Important.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few times, so we're going to get to the casting and to Lili and what is it, Stefania's performance. But before we do, because you mentioned the crew a few times, I don't think it's really talked enough how important the casting of the crew is, of picking your crew members. So I'd love to hear about the process of how you gathered them together to create this.
We were very lucky to land in. First of all, it all begins with our producers. I mean, we just had phenomenal producers. one is Anne Clements, the other Ash Christian, passed away in August at the age of 35. He was a really close friend, and it was heartbreaking. He was such a, and to people who look him up or may have, seen his other films, I mean, he was such a champion of indie cinema.
Yeah.
He made so many, indie projects and, by his, 35 years, and it was just such a sweet guy. Everyone loved him. And really Anne and Ash were, two terrific producers who just put the whole thing together and just had this attitude. I mean, we spend most of our lives in development hell with projects that just never materialize. We just spent years and years doing rewrites and rewrites for producers with things not moving forward. And then came Anne and Ash, and it's like, okay, let's go ahead and do this.
And ironically, the only two producers that aren't from LA were like the ones who were like, let's make this, like just not this flaky attitude that we're so used to.
With the very,
not that LA is all bad.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, but we're just wonderful producers, and we flew to New York and started meeting some crew people there, and then flew to Syracuse where they heard about the incentives, and also we wanted to scout the locations. And the moment we saw what the city had to offer, we were totally in. And then we just started meeting crew people in I think in a hotel where we stayed, and we just met so many great people who are so passionate and just so wanted to make the movie and write the script, and were excited. And it just felt like a bunch of friends, coming to make a movie together, which I didn't have since my USC days, where I was just, making shorts with friends. And I actually didn't even have, even though we had a lot of great people work on the Millionaire Tour. It was in LA. At the end of the day, everyone went home. It's not like everyone stayed in the same hotel and hung out together at night. And because it was so local and so intimate, it was really a set family. They use those words often, but I really felt I made so many beautiful friendships with people who worked with us. It was
but the
really
people
sweet.
that were more prepared were the people that ended up getting the jobs. Like we met with, they were all great, but like some people were just more prepared and came with portfolios and ideas and things like that. So just,
of course,
those were the people that we selected, the ones that were more impressive. Yeah.
And people who, in this kind of a movie, it's easy to know what the movie is about. But I always keep in mind that great Sidney Lumet quote, who said, the best thing you can say about a movie is we're all making the same movie. And you want to know when you start talking to people that they really share the same sensibility for what this movie is about. And we've had projects, even with very talented creatives who just had a different idea of what a movie should be. And in one of them, I even stepped down from directing because I just realized I will not be happy making the movie that they want to make, and they're not happy with the idea of what I have for what the movie should be. So I'm probably just not the person to direct the work for hire that we wrote. So I think that working with people who are like-minded, not that they can have totally different ideas from yours, but just who know what the heart of the movie is and want to serve that heart.
And it was also a little bit of a personality test too. It was a little bit of a personality test. You meet with somebody and you assess like their level of difficultness and kind of like how nice they would be to work with or not. And that factors into.
Well, I think that especially when you're shooting on location somewhere and you're all spending that amount of time together. So many people have said this that I've talked to, and friends of mine in the industry who are just like, ultimately, whether it's on a set or if it's in a writer's room, like people get hired because you want to work with them. It's an office in some way, and in the same way you don't hire someone to work in your office who's kind of a jerk, like you don't really want to hire a jerk on set.
And it's also hard, I feel like, from their perspective too, because they're trying to impress and come to the table with ideas.
Yeah.
But that's the fine line of like, if they're like too aggressive, then it comes off as like,
Yeah.
And it's like an office environment, and even more, I think, because in the trenches of filmmaking, we're working, sometimes 16-hour days, and you're, schlepping equipment in the mud and rain and cold, and and not sleeping the whole night. It's even more than some 9-to-5 office where you see people at work while sitting in a cubicle. So I feel like you really need people to put their hearts into a project, and to be fun to work with, and we had a blast with just a great gang of people just wanting to make a movie together. It was a long answer, but a true one.
So I want to, playing off of this, obviously directors always have to have a fairly good relationship with their DP. So I kind of adopt this question from Alex A in the audience who asked about this. He talked about how it has such a distinct look and style, and I want to sort of add to that too. I think what you do a really good job of balancing is the whimsical nature with which the film starts, as it slides into almost more of a thriller feel at points where you really seem to adopt the mother's perspective. And there is sort of that, I think there was more handheld work done at that point and more, so I'd love for you to kind of talk through the process of storyboarding with the DP and like.
Of course. First of all, the DP, Zach Cooperstein, did a beautiful job. And again, when I'm talking about friends that we're making the movie with, he was just such a fun guy. We were texting yesterday, he's now in Bulgaria shooting another movie. And he was so inspired and inspiring. And, just the fun that we had, like, two film buffs sitting together. How about this? How about that? Let's, we shared an office in the production office we had in Syracuse on the stage there. And we would just sit together in the office and go through a script. And, we had a little drawing board. And we're like, how about we do this? How about we do that? Oh, how about like this shot from like this movie? Do you remember? Let's Google it. It was so much fun. I mean, that alone, was just such a fun experience. And then also on set being inspired and trying things. How about we do this? How about we do that? And so it was beautiful. I created a lookbook as a kind of like a pitch material early on in the process. So long before we were in pre-production or had a DP, I had a lookbook that was already very specific in terms of what I wanted to do with paranoia and with the slice of life authenticity to it, where I really actually try to hold back my natural preference with projects. I'd say most of our projects that we've written tend to be more stylized, thrillers and things that are less slice of life. But with this one, it was so important to just serve the story and the authenticity of it and not call attention to something being showy that just felt like the filmmaker is trying to, show off. So in many ways, I try to be very restrained. But Zach came on board with a beautiful lookbook and so many ideas and so much enthusiasm. I remember we the first time I met him in a hotel in New York, it was just brimming with ideas. And we're just like sitting there having fun, brainstorming ideas now. And I was just, this is going to be fun. I do have to mention that Zach was not the first cinematographer was supposed to shoot the movie. The first one, which shall not be named, committed to the movie before I even met Zach. Committed to the movie, and we started working together and collaborating, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And he came to Syracuse, and we're ready in pre-production. And then he was offered a much bigger TV show, and within an hour, he was on a plane off of Syracuse a week before production.
And we had like a date for sure.
Yeah. So we a week, maybe 10 days before production. So wow. I instantly brought Zach on board and
loved him.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. We pushed production a couple of weeks, which we needed for many reasons anyway, and we just dived in. So long answers to short questions.
No, I love long answers. The worst is when you ask a question and someone gives like a 5-word answer, and I'm like, well, say more on that. That's terrible at the first day. I mean, it turned out great. Like, I think you should have no regrets. But
it was definitely much better. It's just that when you're ready, like start moving forward, and then suddenly you lose your DP.
In the moment, it's probably terrible. You're like, oh my God, our DP just walked out on us.
There are many things on set though. Like at the time, they seem terrible. This is the end of the world, and how are we going to solve this? And then in the end, things kind of just work out.
Yeah. I think there's a sign in the Peter Stark producing program in their office that's right outside the door, and it says, what does it say? Don't worry, it's just a movie. I think is the sign.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a great mantra, I think, because it's true in the moment of it, when these things fall apart, as they inevitably do on every shoot, it truly does feel like the world falling apart. And then usually people can, put the pieces back together.
Yeah, I would say sometimes people ask me what are like the biggest lessons we learned from like from filmmaking and such, and I have to admit that one of them, I think that as a young filmmaker, it's still hopefully pretty young, but as a very young filmmaker, things fall apart, and you kind of stress that maybe this whole thing is just gonna fall apart and not happen. And once you just spend enough days on set and you're just used to things falling apart all the time, and by the end of the day, you know, the footage is in the can and you figured it out. Not that you shouldn't be extremely prepared and extremely solution focused, but you just have a little bit of confidence. Okay, I know that it's the first day of production, the grip truck isn't working, we don't have our equipment, first day of production of Paper Spiders, but it will work itself out. And just having that calm, just that confidence, just because you've been there before and you figure it out by the end of the day, that's a good thing to have.
So I want to ask an alternative version of that question. Since we sort of talked about, you had mentioned earlier about coming out of USC and like your first experience with working on shorts, and I think feeling the disconnect between where you were at then and like the films you were seeing and, you know, the learning process of it. I always think that one of the best questions to ask alumni is what was the best thing you were taught at film school? But the other side of that is, what was the most important thing that you weren't taught at film school that you like learned through the process of it? I know those are like huge generic questions.
They're not so generic. They're just very real and serious questions. I feel like it would almost be a cop-out if I just try to come up with a quick answer just to respond. Whereas it probably takes some deep thoughts to think of all the many great lessons that I learned at USC.
But maybe there's not one. I don't know. I can't speak for.
No, when I was doing production at USC, Natalie was doing screenwriting at CSUN. I mean, at the end of the day, it's very similar.
Like, do you remember one specific lesson that stayed with you? Or
many. I was just actually talking about, you know, Paul Wolf and, you know, with screenwriting and how that stuck with me. But no, also with production. But I would say that I think for many of my friends, many of my most talented friends from school, who really, if I had to gamble, I'd say, you know, they're, you know, likely, I definitely see them, you know, succeeding. And they didn't not succeed because they're not talented, because they're extremely talented. Some filmmakers who I think are more talented than me and no less hardworking. I think that the sense, you fail a lot in the business until you succeed. And if you're not prepared for that and you don't know how natural it is at the beginning to fail, and how much you need to fail in order to succeed, and how much you need to struggle in order to succeed, it's sometimes it could be, I feel like even part of what's tricky about the experience of film school, and I had a wonderful time at USC. I mean, I had the school, I owe so much of what I'm doing today to USC and to the tools that I received and the great teachers that I had and the friends that I had, you know, that I worked with, and you know, many of them still are close friends. But I think that so many of them were burned by the experience of failing, not knowing how normal and common it is when you're done, and how much you need to persevere. And I mean, it's not, I don't think this school didn't teach that. I think that it's just part of life, or didn't prepare for that. But I think that it's just a reality that one kind of needs to wrestle with for a while, because at least I can speak from my own experience, your first projects are probably going to fail. Mm-hmm. You don't have the support system, you don't have the knowledge, the experience, the resources, and you make a short and it's probably not going to be, you know, everything you wanted. And then you judge yourself negatively and say, oh, I guess I'm just not good enough, and you quit. And I mean, a lot of my friends did. Fortunately, I stuck it out, and you just need to fail a bunch before you're at a place that you can succeed. So yeah, maybe that's a lesson. Maybe that's an answer to your question.
Like
yeah,
a life lesson.
I think that's great. I think it's a really good lesson. I think there's a Nelson Mandela quote I'm going to sort of paraphrase, but it's I think what he said was, I'm never wrong, I'm right, or I'm learning. And I think the same goes for success and failure, is you don't really fail, you're learning still. And I think that is a good lesson of kind of, it takes, especially in this industry, it takes a very long time sometimes, and it doesn't always look the way that we pitch it in the brochures, you know? It's a different road than that sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't have a good transition for this, so I'm just going to pivot to talking about the performances. Casey Christian wanted me to sort of ask this on her behalf about what a remarkable performance from Lili Taylor. How did you find the actor who played her? Or how did you find her? And then how did you find the actor who played the daughter as well?
Yeah. So we were, we've been wanting to work with Lili Taylor for a while. We saw her in many things. She's always been a super fantastic actress. But I think that above all, it was American Crime that we watched a few years ago. And we were just blown away by the caliber of the performance. We're just watching her, and both of us were just saying to each other, we don't remember seeing performances in television that were, I think it was season 2 of American Crime, or like on that level that can dial it up to 100. And we were just, with multiple projects that we've written, we're like, maybe this is a role for Lili Taylor. Maybe Lili Taylor could be that. She just really stuck with us. And when we went to make this movie, we really couldn't think of someone who'd be able to dial it up to 100, like Lili.
And also have the realness that she has. Encapsulate those qualities that are kind of hard.
So the fact that she said yes is just an exception to our journey, because I mean, for every yes that we get, we have 10 projects die because actors just pass without usually, or their agents pass without even having the actors read. Or so when Lili said yes, we were in heaven, and she was just exceptional. I mean, you're so lucky when you have actors of that caliber. It's just, I mean, and then Stefania, we auditioned a lot of girls for the role, and many of them were great. They gave great performances. They were really good. They were sweet. We saw most of them not in the room because we got tapes from a lot of places, also from New York, and Stefania was in New Zealand. But they just didn't have that something that
it's like dating. We compare it to dating. We don't have like that thing where like maybe we'll compromise, and they don't have to be like the exact picture that we have.
And it's not looks.
Yeah, it's not looks.
Because it's not that Stefania is necessarily, I mean, we probably saw many actresses who were a lot more similar to you physically, but it's the gist, it's the heart of it. It's the something about in this case, I would say it was probably.
It had to be like even resemble me, but just like that innocence, or like we wanted there was actually an actress that we had in our heads that was going to be I mean, not in our heads. I mean, in reality, we were like going to make an offer to her agent, and we had it down, and we
met with her. Yeah, she was lovely, fantastic actress.
And she was 10 years older than the role.
Yeah.
And so and we were just like, I mean, that was the only negative.
Yeah.
And we wanted somebody we didn't want it to be like 90210 where they're like 30.
Yeah. But it wasn't even the age as much as it was the sophistication. That we just realized we need someone who feels like she has the innocence of a child, and just your heart, goes after her because you see what she's going through. And I often talk about how we feel like empathy is a separate quality from just good acting. And Stefania is an incredible actress and also such a sweet person. But the empathy that you have for her, that's, you can't teach that at school. Either a person, a face, a personality, micro expressions evoke that empathy, or they don't.
And there were two different, we picked two different scenes, like a comedic, more of a lighthearted comedic one, and then more of a, like the really, the homeless alley one. Yeah. And she nailed both of them. And that was hard to find, because some actresses would be really good and strong in one area, and then the other one would falter a little bit. So
it's so natural.
And every take with her was amazing.
Every take. She did not have a bad take in the movie. And of course, I'm sure that many people here listen to this know how much you shape an actor's performance in editing. And how you can take, by choosing the right take, the right moment, stealing a moment from another shot, how much you shape the performance in editing. And very often you need to. And then you have someone like Stefania, every take is gold. And it's, again, we're so lucky to work with actors who are that good. We're lucky for two reasons. First of all, we got great actresses, and our entire cast was fantastic. They're all perfect. But especially, obviously, the main two roles are just so intense dramatically, and both of them just gave their hearts and souls to the project and really connected with them emotionally. They weren't
and they connected with each other too. They were like such a mother and daughter off of set too. They were like, they had this loving bond when even cameras were off,
which you can't predict. I mean, you cast great actors, but you don't know if they're gonna hit it off or if they're just gonna have. You always hear about how, romantic couples on screen, then, the actors hated each other in real life. And sometimes it shows you like, clearly those two people don't like each other. But then
there was something that doesn't show.
Yeah.
Just like, wow,
but they had such a beautiful, they just hit it off. That's such a beautiful relationship on and off screen. And that intimacy that you see on screen, they didn't fake it, they created it. And it just, it just felt so real to us. And we're just so fortunate to have worked with actors who really put their hearts into the project.
There is an innocence to Stefania that I think actually really makes that relationship even more powerful, where specifically in terms of there's something really visceral about that innocence being stripped from her due to this sort of traumatic moment in her life. And I think that casting someone much older, I do think that's true. It kind of would have ruined that in some way.
Yeah.
It would have already felt wizened in some way, you know, and it wouldn't have worked.
And that was it's funny, my editor, Joe Murphy, who also another fantastic collaborator. I'm gonna, we're gonna edit many more movies together. We had such a beautiful friendship working on the movie and making it. But he was talking about how he was saying, like you're describing this movie as coming of age. It's like, every other movie coming out, like Going Out to Sun, this is like coming of age. And we're laughing about it because, we're looking at like the list of projects like coming of age. But we're talking about how very often you think with coming of age, first kiss and but turning from the one being cared for to the parent, like start needing to parent your own parent, needing to be forced into adulthood and suddenly be the one cooking for your mom and not her for you, and et cetera, and caring for her. To us, there was a much deeper coming of age story. So we really wanted to see someone turning from a child to an adult. And again, we're lucky that there's so much. I mean, if you're only as good a director as your actors. I mean, you don't have the time or the ability to teach acting on set. Either actors get it and they're the role, and then your responsibility is just to guide them as you're shooting out of order, and and day one you're shooting scene 50 without having shot the 49 scenes before, and the actors need to know what happened in scene 49 and probably also in scene 42. Otherwise, they're just gonna not know what's going on. And very often, I would say the other thing that, sorry, I'm blabbing. It's just
no, you're great.
The other thing that I feel like I didn't do any directing like with capital D. I said I did like cut. Okay, like in this shot we need to. The actors know their work. They're so good. You don't need to like it. And if you do have any conversations with them, they're always intimate. You just, but there's no need. I mean, you're working with fantastic actors who get the movie so well. You never need to really instruct them on how to act something. Sometimes I would say our personalities were very concise. We get to the point. Not right now when I'm talking, but I'm just blabbing. But when we're not doing Q&As, we get to the point. And so we write a scene and we feel like, okay, 5 sentences, we got the point out of the way, moving on. And then you're on set and the actors deliver it. They did a great performance, but you're like, wow, the scene is now
That's
20
fast.
seconds
That's
and it just doesn't have the meat of the scene. And you're like, okay, we're on set, let's discover the meat of the scene. And you kind of, you realize it in rehearsals, but sometimes more so when you shoot, and things have a different dynamic and energy. And so sometimes you just need to start a lot. It's even more than improvisation, because improvisation is sometimes you can't really, I mean, it's not the actor's job to just suddenly come up with lines. You should have done that as a writer. But sometimes you're just trying to do a little bit of discovery. And for example, the scene where Lili tells Stefania that she's going to live in her car, and she's moving out of the house, which is actually a very sad and true moment from real life. Your mom spent a year living in her car, and it was just heartbreaking. But that real life moment, you shoot it, and the actors do a great job. And you're like, wow, that scene was like 20 seconds and it just felt so easy. We need to dial up the conflict. Let's dial up the conflict. So we just resort to the basics. I remember I go to Stefania, I tell her, listen, you can't let her leave. You cannot let her get out of the house. No matter what, you can't let her leave. And then I go to Lili and I'm like, you can't stay. You have to get out of the house. There's no way you can stay here for another minute. Go, and just with the most simple kind of, ideas, suddenly, you have conflict that's, both actors are just in a moment where they need to, with their, opposite objective. So those and I would say those are actually things that I learned at USC. Jennifer Warren, my directing teacher, that's something that she mentioned a lot. The objective she she was a great actress too, and I remember her talking about that. And I think that that's something that is maybe you try too hard as a young director to try to psychoanalyze the character and explain and talk too much and just overload actors with information, which at the end of the day, if they get the role and they know what it is and they are the role, just let them know where they're going. Let them know where they were before. If you're shooting scene 97 and you haven't shot the 10 scenes before, let them know what happened before. And ideally in rehearsal, also like let them live through it. And we tried as much as we could shoot chronologically. Obviously, we're far from chronologically. We're all over the place, but at least not chronologically, but from easy to hard. But then let them know, what just happened and then where they're going. Yeah.
I keep talking to you about this and monopolizing the time, but I do want to allow for some of the audience to sort of pipe in.
More time left,
So Hermione Beard here asked a question about improvisation, and also had other things to say about sort of the representation of mental health. So Hermione, I am going to bring you up to the panel first, and you can go ahead and turn on your camera if you want, or just do audio. Oh, we see you. We don't hear you though. I think you're still muted. And now you're frozen, I think.
You just have to click unmute, I think. Or
hi.
Are you with us?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of coming in and out. You might want to turn off your video actually, just to improve the connection. Although I love seeing your face, I don't want to give that advice.
Oh no, it's okay. No, I just wanted to thank you for a wonderful film. It's much needed. It was a different perspective and a different point of view on mental illness, and we need so much light to be shed on the topic. So I really appreciate the movie. But the actor who played the counselor, he was the much needed comic relief in the film. And I wondered, I know you're great writers, but was that scripted or did he ad-lib some of his lines, because he was hilarious?
First of all, yeah, it's Michael Still Creighton, who's a terrific actor. He actually, you may have seen him in Spotlight, and is a very emotional scene where he played one of the adults who, as a kid, was raped by a priest, and gave such a heartbreaking performance there. And he's one of those actors who could just pull it off so well, both dramatically and comically and comedically. And yeah, I mean, we always intended for the role to be a bit of a comic relief, but it was such a hard role to cast. It was so hard to find someone who will find that. Maybe that scene had the hardest balance of comedy and drama.
That was the scene we spent the longest on, because like at times it was too funny, and there was, that we actually trimmed it down a lot. Like I could just go on with like ridiculous things that just I've been told before by counselors that I would sometimes want to say. But I mean, he delivered it really great. He was empathetic.
Yeah. He did add a few lines, but I mean, most of the scene was exactly as it was written.
We always knew that we wanted like an incompetent therapist. Make their journey.
And Natalie, having worked as a therapist and having done 3,000 hours or more of just of counseling, had a chance to work with a lot of characters who were counselors, and many of them were characters with a capital C, and it was we just felt like there was a lot of truth about the incompetent.
But it was also fun writing all the things that you should never say.
Yeah. But
the movie was touching to touch me, but I really needed that break, because like a lot of people on this call, a lot of us have experienced that. So thank you for shedding it. Like I said, showing a different point of view, and it's much needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hermione. Sprott Woods, I'm gonna promote you now next while I bring Hermione back to the attendee list. And just like a reminder, you can unmute or video, or there you are. Hey there.
Yeah, hi. So I left a comment. I said this was the greatest film that I've seen this year. Thank you very much. It was a really wonderful film. You guys had in the very beginning, you had a scene where the mother walks into the room and there's a picture frame on the wall and her reflection is cast on that picture frame. For most of the movie, you leave picture frames out of it, but towards the end, when she quits USC and she comes back, there's picture frames in the box. So I was wondering if that was a motif that you had.
Yeah, we actually, we love doing those, what we sometimes consider like parallels in a story. And we try to do that a lot. That was probably the most notable one, where we use the picture frame reflection twice.
But good eye too, because
Yeah,
I feel like you're the only person that's commented on that.
But we did it with a number of repeating shots there, with the tree, with the umbrella that is the bookends of the movie, the yellow umbrella overhead shot that opens the movie and closes the movie, and with the pushing on Lili in the airplane at the beginning, and then the same pushing on Stefania in the airplane later when she goes to USC. And with Stefania hugging Lili in bed, with like shot more or less from the same angle as Stefania sitting alone in bed in the same position later when her mother is in the homeless alley. And the reason that we love doing those things is because we feel like whenever a movie takes you on a journey, if ever it reminds you toward the end of the journey where you were at the beginning of the journey, it kind of lets you, at least that was our feeling, writing it. It makes you think for a second about that moment that happened before, and what a journey you've been on, before, and how much what we went through from that first time that we saw Lili looking at that reflection in the picture, and later when Stefania is taking down the picture. So those kinds of parallels it's just something that we always like putting in projects.
Even if it's subconscious, we're talking about it. Like even if nobody notices it, maybe like subconsciously they'll recognize this familiarity.
Yeah. Well, what was the theme? What was the theme behind that?
Well, it began with the desire to show the fact that there was a father and give him and show a face, and not do it in an expositional way, because we see so many movies where someone is just like sitting on the bed looking at the picture of the loved one, and you have the shot of the face, and then you have the reaction shot of the picture, and you see, okay, the filmmaker is telling us that they're looking at someone. So we wanted to break that, and we figured, okay, if we're already stopping on a picture, let's do it in a moving shot, that it comes more naturally, that it's not like, we cut to that shot to just tell you the story, and let's do something interesting with it, which was the reflection, and then also get back there. But it was really just meant to make us think about the loss that is the trigger for the whole story to some extent. Yes, the mental illness probably always existed to some extent, but the death of the father was definitely a huge trigger. And then the sense of abandonment with the daughter was also clearly connecting to it. What I'm gonna do when you're gone. So it was about that idea of showing how the family was once, there was a father once in the picture, and then eventually, and then eventually, even the mother is no longer, like that family has been broken apart. She lost in a way, her mom and her dad by that point in the movie.
Well, it sounds like you just said it's closure.
Yeah.
She begins with reflecting on the father, and then when she puts it in the box, she's getting over it.
Yeah.
Beautiful film. I really loved it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. So we're going to move you back to attendee, and then if Josh Pevsner is still around, we're going to see. Nope, I'm not seeing him. Oh, I'm sorry, because it's John. My apologies. That's why I can't find you. Here we go, John. So I just promoted you, and go ahead. Floor is yours. John, you with us?
While we're waiting for John, someone commented, I saw in the notes, about the songs.
Yes.
The songs in the movie are from Lili Kershaw. First of all, the score was written by my good friend Ariel Blumenthal, who's a fantastic composer, and it's just his music was just so full of heart. But the songs, we picked songs by Lili Kershaw, and our music supervisor, Melanie Mitchell, who made it possible for us to get the songs. At first we picked one, and then we picked two, and then she said, might as well, get three, and really make it part of the DNA of the movie. And then we put the third one.
We didn't even know about her before the movie.
Yeah.
We saw, we heard her music in the show.
In pre-production, yeah. And we just felt like, wow, this feels like as if it was written for the movie.
So Joe Sue Whistler, this is an important question, so I want to make sure we get it before she signs off, if it's not too late. How do people see this movie?
Oh, right now it's available on Amazon, and available in every streaming digital platform that is
Google Play.
Yeah.
Also in theaters.
At
the Laemmle.
In LA, at the Laemmle in Pasadena and North Hollywood, New York at the IFC Center, if anyone's tuning in from New York, and in different states, there are different showtimes in different theaters. And also, I will take advantage of this opportunity to tell people, if you did like the movie, it did resonate with you, we would really, really appreciate it if you leave us a positive review on on Amazon or IMDb or wherever you watch it, because at the end of the day, for a small indie movie with no money for advertising it's really all word of mouth. And if people actually liked the movie and enjoyed it, really just the word of mouth, or even recommend it to friends. That word of mouth is what allows the movie to just get out there. Otherwise, it just sinks and disappears like most good indies. So we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Joe. And I have heard from other people too. Amazon ratings especially are great because I think the more ratings it gets and the more positive, the more it bumps it up into
which is what you need. If you're a studio, you have your placements and you just have your placement at the top of the line, and then everyone knows about you. If you're an indie, if you don't have a lot of reviews and you don't have a lot of views, you just get pushed down, and people who may really enjoy your movie will just never even come to hear about it because it will always stay in the invisible section it will never get up to the carousels. So if anyone liked the movie, it would be so meaningful if they could just,
I didn't realize it was based on ratings and not views. I didn't even know
it's
that.
both.
Yeah, I think it's a combo. I mean, no one knows the exact algorithm and what amount of it is ratings, what amount is views, and then what amount is personal taste of the individual.
Yeah. It's a combination of all.
Yeah, it is some combo of all of that. But I have been told by people who have released films through Amazon specifically that that is an important thing.
Kayvon. It was Kayvon was in all my film classes. We're friends. It's nice to see his I didn't get to see the comment, but nice to see him. I guess we'll DM each other later. I didn't even see
the comments. Should I be looking at do you want us to
I think we'll look at the comments later, so we don't keep.
Oh yeah, you can. I can send you a transcript of the comments. You can read all the praise.
Because if we close it now, it'll.
Yeah.
No, it won't erase it. You can.
It won't.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
John, are you still with us, or did we lose you? All right, I'm going to assume we lost John. I believe John's question was, what do the paper spiders represent?
Good one. That is usually the number one question that we get, which we vow to ourselves that we're going to leave open to interpretation. And every time we just end up interpreting it. When we were writing the story, for a while it was called Untitled Paranoia Screenplay. And we figured, okay, we want to go with something metaphorical for paranoia, and we're toying around with different ideas. I think paper sharks.
Good, we didn't go with paper tigers because they're both in theaters at the same time. Paper tigers.
Exactly.
And paper spiders. But we wanted something.
I think paper shark. I think for a while.
Something that's fictional. That's paper. That's fake.
Yeah, it's
a fake fear.
The idea of an unreal threat, like a paper shark or something. And then, but we left it off. We're like, okay, we'll figure out the title by the time after we're done writing it. And then we got to the final scene, and we said, okay, how do we convey that she was in the psychiatric hospital for a while? And then we said, okay, maybe if she does, her little thing with turning the pill cups that she gets daily into those little spiders, then if you
I'm
see
not
that
even
she's
sure
done
people
that.
picked up.
Maybe.
Anyways, the pills, I don't know if
Yeah,
if
the
people
pill
didn't pick
cup
up.
that she turned
Those are
into.
supposed to be spiders, and then that represents the number of days that she was in the hospital.
Yeah. So then we.
But we couldn't
so
do
that,
that with sharks. Like, well, like,
yeah,
we can't make paper sharks.
So we figured we're going to we're seeing it now as a metaphor for both paranoia and recovery, and we hope that it would be clear to people. But since we always end up interpreting it to people, I'm.
But I kind of like that it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't want to. I mean, it could have been like, we have friends up to like throw titles like ideas, and like sometimes we get like really obvious titles like she's afraid. And we're like, we can't call the movie She's Afraid.
Although She's Afraid goes right to the point. It really,
exactly.
really choreographs the whole movie for you.
Yeah.
I actually, so before actually getting to the final frame, I had a feeling this wasn't what it was based off of, but I know the term paper towns is for towns on maps that aren't real and exist solely on maps to represent, it's sort of like a signature of the map maker. But the whole idea is it's a fictitious town that's written on the map. Yeah. And then of course spiders, there's this arachnophobic instinct of like people are afraid of spiders. So I thought there was some play on that involved before saying it.
Yeah, I think that we set with a list of, okay, how can we say unreal threat in a metaphorical way? And we just put together a lot of words to try to see which one.
A list of animals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of you guys' time. We're a little bit past. It's been so great talking to you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I really appreciate the time here. Audience clearly loved this.
Thank you.
I see another question in the Q&A box.
Oh, we have is that Raj? Raj, let's bring you up, Raj. Well, we'll make time for one more. I mean, I don't want to take up your guys' time.
You're in bed, so we're good.
Okay. So Raj, we'll bring you up.
Wow, what a lovely film. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Matt, and thank you for sharing your film. What inspired you for the story?
The paranoia part was based or inspired by my experience with my mom. So that part of the story was based on reality, sadly. But a lot of the other parts were just like characters we had met or people that we knew, and that's kind of like what I love, like little sentences or lines that like I would hear and then put them in somewhere, just inspired by relationships that I had and things like that.
And how long it took the film to finish, from start to the finish, filming?
Filming was 20 days. It was 20 days over 4 weeks. We shot 5 days a week for 4 weeks. So it was a 4-day. It was a 20-day production. So 20 days.
Both the Lili and Stefania acting was so great. And do you intend to promote this film towards the cause of the actual subject?
We're actually very, very lucky to have the support of NAMI, the National Alliance to Mental Illness. They loved the movie. The national director of NAMI, Katrina Gay, actually participated in our premiere, a virtual premiere at the Dances with Films Festival last June, and was part of the panel. We've had NAMI chapters in Anchorage and in other cities that had the heads of the chapters join our Q&As to discuss the topic. And I believe that in the coming days, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, May, and NAMI is going to release their guide of resources from May, including book and movie recommendations, and they're recommending the movie to their members with a discussion guide. And I believe that we also will do a similar screening for NAMI members to discuss it.
Really, thank you very much. And both the actors were so great, and we loved it. Thank you. Love to see USC on it too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Well, I do see there's one last question. Or do we have time? Can we bring Omar on to ask the... All right. So Omar, if you're with us, this seems like a good one to sort of send us off. So I'm going to invite you up real quick. Omar, can you hear us?
There's some sound difficulties, huh?
Omar, you are still muted. I don't know if you are talking right now, but. All right, well, for the sake of time, I will move forward with Omar's question and ask the obligatory "what is next for you" question.
We also want to ask that question. We have several projects. Some of them we've even written before Paper Spider. Some of them we've written 5, 6, 7 years ago that still managed to survive years of rejection, and still have producers who are enthusiastic about pushing them forward. And we really hope that Paper Spiders will will them toward production.
I feel like it's going to depend on the success of Paper Spiders, because we have some other indies that are similar, and if it does do well, then maybe those will get made, and if it doesn't do well, I hope not. But like then, unfortunately, there's like a prequel that we have to Paper Spiders, minus the paranoia part. But
so would you use the same characters and stuff, like actually?
Oh no, I'm different story. I'm
In our minds, it's a prequel.
But and then we have like thrillers.
Very small spiders.
No.
But I mean, we've written thrillers that we're excited about. We wrote a drama that's a true story of pharmaceutical corruption that we think is extremely important, and we really hope will get made. We've written other indies and thrillers and comedies, and we've actually written things in many different genres.
I feel like it's kind of like if you have Italian food and then the next night you're like, yeah, I just want a burger, and then you're like, oh, like I kind of want Chinese food.
Yeah.
So like we'll write like this movie, you know, and then we'll do like a thriller, you know, and then who knows.
Well, that's part of the fun of it, is, you know, jumping around through the different genres and stuff.
It really is. And in every project, we just immerse ourselves in a different world. Sometimes like that pharma drama that I mentioned requires a lot of research, and you just learn so much about a topic that you had no idea about, and you just even educate yourself in a really interesting way. And other ones take you in a very different direction. It's so much more stylized. And so
sometimes your agent pushes you in a certain direction. You're like, well, but no, it's great because it's ultimately what sells. Like, you know, you always want to do what's going to sell and be successful.
Well, I know our audience is very much looking forward to whatever comes next. This is absolutely the most active chat box I've seen. So Inon and Natalie, I'm so glad you could join us as well. It was great to have you here too. It's been so great talking to you both. Thank you for being here.
Great talking to you. Thank you so much for having us on, and thank you everyone who stayed and watched and listened to us yapping.
Go rate the film on Amazon now. Go do that. Help spread the word about it, and then, you know, send it off to more people via social media as well. Let's get the word out.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks so much.